Buenas, bienvenidos a este vídeo de unplandivino.net. Estamos aquí con Claudia desde Argentina para seguir visualizando el vídeo sobre la ética, la moral, el regalo, todo esto de Miller. ¿Qué tal por allí con la sequía?
Hola, muchas gracias, Iván. Bien, la verdad es que tuvimos una refrescada de lluvia estos días, nublado, acá, bueno, como parte de todo el desorden, entre comillas, desorden, que estamos viviendo climáticamente. Ya hay una clara desorientación estacional, o sea, hace calor en invierno y hace frío en verano.
Ujú.
Así que bueno, estamos con un intermedio, una transición, pero sí estaría coincidiendo con la primavera, una temperatura muy agradable y disfrutando del nublado.
Ujú.
Pero ayer fue sofocante, ayer la verdad. Tenemos un ambiente desértico con fresco por las noches y muchísimo calor hacia el mediodía. Está resultando un poco difícil estar fuera de la sombra.
Y eso que solo es
Así que
primavera. Bueno, pues aquí el 1 de octubre del 2021 estamos en el planeta Tierra, pues si nos escuchan también desencarnados,
sí,
se creen que han nacido en otro planeta los
ujú.
pobres. Que, como ya vimos,
Sí,
parece ser que toda esta confusión que tenemos en torno a la nueva era y al extraterrestre desencarnados, pues el gran tema que no se habla, ahora que hemos sacado, es el tema de los abortos, que muchos de ellos pueden que sean abortos naturales, que como nacen directamente en las manos de espíritus, pues imagínate, les puedes contar lo que quieras. Pero eso es todo un temazo que a mí me gustaría que lo habláramos un día cuando hagamos el repaso que aún no hemos hecho, como en grupo incluso, o entre los dos, que digamos, vamos por la web a hacer como una especie de secretos del universo por nuestra cuenta, ¿no? Como que Miller hizo esos vídeos de vamos a contar así todo en unas cuantas horas para hacer un esquema global. Pues eso con la web delante,
claro.
señalando algunos de tus vídeos también o los que sean, etcétera, ¿no? Para ilustrar, bueno, cosas de las que nos apetezca en ese sentido. Pero bueno, que vamos directos, que esto es para visualizar al vídeo.
Okey,
Entonces, espero que se oiga. Si no se oye, pues ya me dices y si no, pues tiramos para adelante. Bueno,
dale.
vamos para allá.
We're just many of us too afraid to do so. So the reality is also that we are willing to talk about love until the cows come home, as the saying goes. We're willing to talk about love and talk about love, talk about love some more, and talk about love some more, without even engaging one aspect of love in our day-to-day life. You know why we're willing to do that? Because on one hand, our soul is screaming out to us going, you love love. You want to live in love. That's what your soul's saying. And on the other hand,
Aquí te encanta el amor, más bien, amas el amor, más que eso de amas amor.
your soul's also screaming out to you going, but you're terrified. I'm terrified of love. I'm terrified of how love is going to look like, how love is going to affect my entire life, how it's going to be in action. And so what I do is I've got these scales inside of myself, this internal scale system. On one side, I've got love, and then on the other side, I've got fear. Right? And what we finish up doing in our life is we finish up going, okay, I do want to love, but I don't want to love as much as my fear might get triggered. So I want to love, but I don't want to love that much that all of my fears are going to have to be given up. That's our problem as a society. It's also our problem individually. You look at how much individually we are having trouble with actually putting into action the principles of divine truth. Why are we having that trouble? The main reason why we're having the trouble is because fear is still the dominant emotion in our life. It's not so much that we have fear. Having fear is not the problem. Can you see that? The problem is that we live in it, in the fear. The problem is that we honor it. The problem is that we value it. That's the problem we have. right? This causes us, these emotions, this honouring the value of living in fear causes us to act highly unethically. We have no ethics as a result of our fear. Because if you think about it, if we had some ethics and no fear, it would be so simple to be ethical, wouldn't it? We'd be able to just do it every day automatically. We wouldn't even worry, would we? We wouldn't be worried about, oh, but what about the money? Or what about this? Or what about that? Or what about how this looks? Or any of these other things, because we would be so focused on the fact that there's no fear, so we'd only be focused on the love part of the equation. That's all we'd be focused on. So life is a lot more simple like that, as you can imagine. See, at the moment inside of us, it's really, I see this happening quite a lot inside of each person. Inside of us, we have this measuring system, just like the scales here. We have this measuring system that's going on constantly. We measure every possible action in our life as to whether it's going to create more fear in our life or not. That's the measuring system we use. Can you see that? And if we believe it's going to create a more difficult life, and we only have to believe it, it doesn't even have to be true. We only have to believe it. If we believe it, we now then take those actions and we do whatever the fear dictates. It doesn't even have to be true. We do it. That's our problem. And because we do that, and we got this internal scale going, fear, no fear, fear, no fear, fear, no fear, fear, no fear. Then of course we respond in addictions, which is also unethical. Right? We respond in addictions because we are so driven by our fear. So if you had to ask the question, what causes unethical behaviour? It's not your fear that causes unethical behaviour. It's your valuing fear that causes unethical behaviour. It's honouring fear that causes your unethical behaviour. It's not the fear itself. So many people I see using fear as an excuse. It's not fear that's the problem. It's your unwillingness to see that fear has no value that is the problem. It's your unwillingness to see that you're honouring fear. That's the problem. That's what causes all of your unethical behaviour. Every single time you honour fear, you are placing fear as your God. And the world is doing this. You know, a lot of people say the God of the world is money, or the God of the world is whatever. No, the God of the world currently is fear. That's the God of the world. Because that's the thing that every single person on the planet generally responds to first. That's the thing, fear. They value it, they honour it, and because they value it and honour it, they live in it. Right? And the result of this fear is that it is the cause of all unethical behaviour on the planet. All unethical behaviour on the planet is caused by fear. So can you see that it's so important for us to stop honouring our fear and start honouring love? And this is what this statement does. This golden rule that I gave to people in the first century, that is what it does. It honours love over fear. Because it says, in treating others how I would like them to treat me, not how they treat me, but how I'd like them to treat me. I am now honouring love over any fear-based situation that can occur. So what if they want to kill me? How will I act towards them? Well, I don't want to kill them, and I don't want to be killed. So I would act in harmony with that. Does that make sense? That's how I would act. What if they wanted to destroy my life? How would I act towards them? Well, I don't want my life destroyed. So how could I consider destroying their life in return? I can't. Right? What if they wanted to torture me? How would I act? Well, I don't want to be tortured. So how could I ever consider torturing them? What if they wanted to shoot me? How would I act? Well, I don't want to be shot. So I certainly can't consider shooting them in return. What if they want to rape my wife? No? How would I act? Well, I don't want my wife to be raped. Right? So I would not ever consider raping their wife or child in return. Can you see? It's like every single violent action that can be taken against me, if I do this, if I understand this principle, I could never take the action in return. What if I'm in a religion and they want to excommunicate me from the religion? Well, I don't want to be excommunicated. So why would I ever excommunicate another person? I don't want to be damned for the rest of my life, so why would I damn another person for the rest of theirs? I don't want to be criticised and judged constantly by other people, so why would I want to criticise and judge anybody myself? Can you see it? Just you can go from the most extreme action a person can consider to the least extreme action that we consider, and if I'm applying this principle, I'm going to pretty much be loving in every situation because I'm going by what I would like to be done to myself. And instead of to do that, I'm going to have to confront all of these fears that I have about doing that, aren't I? So I'm going to have some courage. Courage is a very important quality to develop. And if I address these fears and I stop honouring and valuing my fear over all other things, I stop making fear my God. So that's no longer my God. And even if I don't believe in God, if I make love my God, I'm going to be better off. Can you see? I don't even have to believe in God. I can make love my God instead, and I am capable of changing my life. And then if you start actually accepting God and going through the process of all of those things and receiving divine love, it's easier then to love, and therefore I become more like God and more like love anyway. But I don't even have to do that if I really want to change. All I've got to do is stop honouring my fear as God.
I live a very fear-driven life, and I'm not sure how I start addressing that.
Well, what's one thing you're afraid of?
I clearly have money issues because I've got to the broke.
Okay. So you're afraid of something?
I'm afraid of being successful and having a lot of money.
Huh?
Okay. I'm very afraid of relationships.
Yeah, I was going to say these are very low on your list.
Yeah. Okay, let's cut to the chase. I'm really afraid of relationships, and I've just discovered recently that I'm extremely angry with men, which was a bit of a surprise.
Okay. So even a friendship with a man is going to be quite difficult if you're extremely angry with men, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's say you pick an area of your life, like you've done, where what you're really afraid of. You notice initially when we do that, we often pick areas that we're not as afraid of. List all of them. And first,
Yeah, we're just warming up to
we're
it.
really just warming up, right? Because there are.
Esto no sé si se entiende en Argentina, calentando motores, ¿no? Solo estamos empezando.
Sí, sí, se
Vale.
comprende, Iván.
Muy gracioso este punto. Bueno, sigamos.
Often a whole area of a list of things that we are afraid of, but in terms of the real fears that we have, they're often what I would call my primary fears. And often when I start addressing my primary fears, my secondary fears are involved.
Okay.
So, for example, if security is a primary fear, so let's say security is a primary fear, and a secondary fear is money,
Yeah.
right? And safety is a primary fear, and the secondary fear is, well, again, money.
Yeah.
You can see that these two issues are going to at some point intertwine with each other. They're going to some point relate to each other.
Este tema de la diferencia entre estas dos palabras en inglés, que casi son sinónimas, yo creo, yo no lo termino de pillar muy bien, pese a que alguna vez intenté mirar, pues eso, o sea, me puse a mirar las definiciones, creo, pero las traducciones a veces son seguridad para las dos. Entonces, por eso, bueno, he puesto estar a salvo, pero yo creo que una es más en plan animalesca y otra es más en plan mundana, de seguridad, quizá más temas dinero y safety más de eso, pero no lo sé. Entonces eso. Pero bueno, el punto aquí es eso, el miedo secundario parece que está diciendo cómo que hace que estas dos cosas estén relacionadas entre sí. Si te ocurre algún sinónimo, pues lo dices, y si no, pues, o como veas.
Te hablaba sin haber abierto el micrófono.
Vale.
No, para nada, no. O sea, no, comprendo un poco, sí, de lo que hace a la naturaleza sería, y después las otras cuestiones de lo que hace al sistema falso de creencias que tenemos. Un poco, sí.
No sé,
Es
sería
lo
una
que acabas de decir.
visión, pero no sé si es, pero vale. Bueno, pues sigamos.
Dale.
So my suggestion with any person who's wanting to confront anything in their life is this. The best things to deal with first are not the secondary things.
Okay.
Because they will have a lesser effect on your life once you've dealt with them than these things. These things are having the biggest effect on your life. So doesn't it make sense logically to deal with the biggest things in your life first?
Yes.
Does it make sense? So what I would do is I would go, okay, what are my biggest issues? So relationship is one of them. Okay. So it's one of your biggest issues. So that's one of the issues you want to focus on first.
Okay.
Right? So forget about the money issue for a while. When I say forget about it, go out and get a job and work to get enough of your stuff, you know, whatever. Don't deal with that issue just yet. Whatever needs to be done with your money, do it. Right? Even if it's not in a job that you don't like at this point, go and do that. Because this is a gradual process of change, right? So do that, because that issue is not so big an issue for you as this issue. This is the issue you need to put most of your spare time.
I've pretty
all
much
of your spare time.
hidden for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
In my house, not going out.
Yeah. So all of your spare time needs to go into this relationship issue. So what do you remember? This is a part of the experimentation process that we discussed yesterday. Yes. So what would I do to address what experiments would I create? to address this relationship issue in an ethical way where I can begin, so it has to be in an ethical way. So in other words, if I decided, oh, well, I'm just going to go out, find a man, have sex with him, and then I'll start working through a relationship with him. Right? Does that sound would you like a man to decide that with you?
No.
Right? Obviously not. You know, it's not very kind, and it's not very, you're just getting used by somebody, which isn't very kind. So why would you then ethically do that with him? So you can't create an experiment that's unethical and therefore unloving. But what you could do is you could start finding places where men are, right, and decide to actually enter into friendships with these men and see how that process goes for you, wouldn't you?
Yes.
That would be more ethical, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To actually desire to get to know them, desire to what's going on for them, you know, desire to understand them, desire to. These are the things you want from men, aren't they? Don't you desire a man to understand you and get to know you?
Absolutely.
And these are the ethical things that this is the things you want from the man. So why don't give that to a man in a friendship environment initially, right? But because to be a friendship environment.
Aquí le sale, en vez de amigo, le sale frito, que es fried. Por eso se ríen. En vez de friend, que se dice más o menos, le sale fried.
And you explain to him right at the beginning if you wanted to. You could say, look, my problem is that I'm pretty angry with men. So I'm not sure that you're going to want to agree with this, but I'd like to get to know you, but I've got this problem. That I'm not wanting to get to know you to have a physical relationship with you, like in terms of a sexual relationship with you. I just need to have a few men friends in my life so that I can begin to interact with men and begin to understand men better and begin all the things that you want men to do for you.
Yeah.
I can begin to understand men better. I can begin to understand what's going on and how men feel and think and so forth. And I'd like to engage, honestly engage, this kind of sort of friendship with you. Like I don't want to engage a relationship because I'm not certain that I want to be with you, right? So I know that I can't engage a relationship with you, but I can engage a friendship with you. Now, would you be willing to enter into this kind of, arrangement with me so that I can learn some things and who knows, you might learn some things too, or you just might learn that I'm a bitch. But either way, we'll learn something, right, in the process.
Y a veces la palabra bitch la usan mucho en inglés. Yo no sé si suena tan fuerte como pueda sonar zorra en algunos sitios. Pero bueno, es una cosa que a veces se le traducía por puta o cosas así también. Pero...
Claro, acá sí.
Vale,
sí. Pero zorra también se entiende.
And if you approached it in that way, it'd be very honest. Yeah. You're very open, very ethical. And what then I would choose to do is go to a place, this would be my experiment, go to a place where people are doing things that I love to do. So if I loved music, I would go to a place and look around at guys that are there in the place in music, and I'd just approach them and say, look, this is the issue I have. And sooner or later, one of them will respond in some way. Even if they tell you to get lost, they'll respond in some way, right? And a lot of times you can just even sit there in an environment and be approached by somebody else and you say, well, this is what I'm here for. Explain to them, but you don't even have to go up to them a lot of times. You can just sit there and wait for them to come to you. But engage the process ethically. In other words, don't enter a relationship with them unless you desperately want to love them and you want to demonstrate that love. Don't enter into a sexual relationship with them unless you desperately want to give them sex and you desperately want to receive that from them and you desperately would like to love them. And when I say desperately, it's probably not the right term, but you'd love them, you want to love them and they want to love you. And don't do anything unless it's ethical. But choose to do it choose to address the fear. Now, when you begin addressing a fear that is a primary fear, remarkable things happen in your life, because all the emotional reasons, all the emotions that you have related to the reason why you've been afraid of this particular thing in your life start to come up. And all of the beliefs that you have that are unloving and unwarranted in many cases start coming up. And all of the childhood history that you have that created these beliefs and emotions all start to appear, right?
Yeah.
And now you're in a process of engaging your biggest fears. And the beauty of engaging your biggest fears is if you release them, that no longer becomes a fear. And in fact, you'll find most of your fears become desires. So instead of fearing a relationship, you work through your fear enough to get to the point where you desire a relationship. Make sense?
Yes.
And that's a good sign that you've actually dealt with a lot of your fears once you start to actually, from your heart, desire something. Now, with some primary fears, they won't turn into desires. There'll be other primary fears that you have that won't turn into desires at all. They'll be transformed into something else. But you'll be amazed at how many times some of the primary fears that you have are actually, in the end, going to turn out to be some of your primary desires. And in fact, this is something that goes on inside of the soul quite frequently. Sometimes the things that we have the largest amount of fear associated with are also the things that we have the largest amount of desire and the largest amount of fear about our desire not being met. And so this is why it's very good to engage the process. Now, once we engage that process, can you see if you just changed your fears associated with the relationship, you will have helped yourself in your relationship with God, you will have helped yourself in your relationship with your soulmate,
Yeah.
and you will have helped yourself in your relationship with others,
Definitely.
which would include your family, your children, if you have any, and your friends. And on top of that, you will have helped yourself in your relationship with anybody who comes to you in your environment as a subsequent result of focusing your energy and attention on that one thing. What I see a lot of people doing is they know they have emotional issues inside of themselves relating to a specific subject, but they are in so much fear about that particular subject that they do not actively address the fear associated with the subject. And as a result of that, they remove the potential for growth from their life in that particular area. That potential is removed.
I realised that after looking at some of your DVDs.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, whoops, I've just hidden myself away very safely so that I don't ever have to feel that fear.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the problem, is that we need to stop doing that. We need to stop hiding ourselves from things. So my suggestion is, and by the way, this is a very ethical thing to do. The reason why it's such an ethical thing to do is up until this point in time, what we do with our fears, the problem with having these fears, these primary fears in particular, is what we do with them is we expect our environment to conform to our fear. So in other words, we're asking everybody else to honour our fear as much as we honour our fear. Huh? Now, is that ethical? Would you like everybody else around you to make you honour their fear as much as they did? Of course you wouldn't. But unfortunately, as a society, we generally do that with everyone around us. We're asking other people to honour our fear, to value our fear. You'll be surprised how many times, even in a presentation that I give, I get questions asked, all related to fear. They want me to honour their fear as much as they do. And when I give an answer that challenges fear, you'll be often, well, not perhaps surprised, but often you'll notice their rage or anger, because they do not want me to have a lower value on their fear than what they have. Right? So what many people want from me is they want me to pander to their fear. So they don't want the truth, they want me to pander their fear. Now, to be frank with you, if I pandered to everyone's fear, I'd be a very famous person. I'd be sort of like a Tony Robbins type of character who panders a lot to other people's fear. I'm not a person like that who panders to other people's fear, because it's not ethical for me to do so. I don't want you to pander to my fear. I would like you to challenge my fear. Right? So it's not right for me then to pander to yours. I want to challenge your fear. Yeah? And I suggest that if you do that, choose the biggest things you fear in your life and work on those first. Because if you choose the biggest things you fear in your life and work on those first, you'll have the greatest change in your life at the shortest amount of time. That's a very economical way of using your time. It's not economical to use your time in another direction, in fact. It's not economical for you to change a little tiny fear, right, while you leave these big fears unchallenged. It's far more economical in terms of the use of your own time and the use of your own resources and the use of the resources of the world, in fact, will be far better used if you challenge your biggest fears first. So it is actually an ethical action you can take by challenging your fears first, the biggest fears you have first. Sure, yeah.
How does God see fear? And when I'm honouring my fear, what happens to God's laws?
Well, as I've pointed out, when I honour my fear, I now have fear as my God. So if we look at who our God is, if fear is our God, how do you think God feels about fear? So what God sees is fear has become a competitor for God's emotions with his children. Fear has become the dominant factor in people's life. Now, God doesn't judge that, but God understands that fear is the result of the false expectations that appear real to society, right? In fact, God understands that the whole fear grew because of the walking away from God. Because if we hadn't walked away from God in the first place, then fear could never have grown to the extent that it has now. Because we'd have some level of trust that we have a mummy and daddy, God, who provide for us and look after us and accept us and love us and all of those kind of things. Does that make sense? So the beauty of it is that fear is the false expectations appearing real are not valued by God at all. So God doesn't value your fear. In fact, all of God's laws challenge your fear. God doesn't value your fear at all. God doesn't say, oh, Joy, you've got such a terrible amount of fear in there that I'm going to honour your fear for a minute. Right? God's going, no, I'm not going to honour a single fear inside of Joy for 1 minute. And don't you feel that when you start recognising a lot of God's laws and everything? You see the law of attraction at work there. Like, can you see the law of attraction honouring your fear? What does it do with your? It exposes your fear every single time. As it's like, bang, there's my fear again. Bang, there's my fear. You're afraid of having an accident, you finish up having one. You're afraid of, you're afraid of having a broken relationship, you finish up having one. And like the law of attraction just exposes your fears constantly. That's how God feels about your fear. He wants your fear to be gone completely. He also knows, God also knows that there is no fear in true love. So God knows that there is no fear in true love. So if you really loved, even yourself, you would not be afraid. If you really loved God, you would not be afraid. If you really loved your soulmate, the other half of yourself, you would not be afraid. Fear is created because a lack of love exists. So of course, God just wants you to help you wipe out your fear. So there is no longer fear. And instead, what's just left is then true love. That's what God wants. God wants us to no longer honour our fear as God and honour God as God. Right? Honour your Creator as God. Honour your Creator as the person who is the source of your existence and the source of your life, and therefore there's nothing to fear. That's what God wants us to do. But that all being said, God doesn't criticise you for your fear. God just knows that your fear is a figment of your own experience, and once you release it, you won't need to fear anything again. That's what God knows. Vera? Thanks for running around for us.
I'm really angry at men, and I'm really scared of men.
Angry at men and scared of men? Yes?
Yeah.
So similar emotions too.
Yeah. But through my teens and 20s, I had a lot of friendships with men. In fact, my best friends were men.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the law of attraction of that. And the other
Did you have relationships during that time?
Well, when I met my husband, I did.
Yeah.
But I feel like I've had a 26-year unethical marriage.
Right.
You know, both sides.
Yep. And that's often the case.
Yeah.
You know, when we're in a bartering system.
Yeah.
It's often the case.
And like I've been working to address those things.
Yep.
And being more honest with him, telling him I don't think he's my soulmate, and asking him to think about, well, am I the right person for him, and opening up a dialogue about it.
Can I point out to you though that on this issue of you don't think he's your soulmate, how would you know?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know.
Exactly. So
I
why
don't
say
know.
it?
Well, I said to him, because I thought, well, I've got to start being honest here.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I don't know. This hasn't been working the way we've been doing it. It's not working. I've been unloving to you.
But you remember you said, this is what I need to raise with you. Remember you said, I think you're not my soulmate. Yeah, I just want to address this issue because it's an issue that's happening very regularly. Right?
Well, we've decided to stay together to try and work out whether we are or not.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. But even this statement is fraught with ethical problems.
Okay.
Right? And for a start, you're using your thoughts to determine something. As we've discussed yesterday, thoughts and feelings need to be involved, right, in terms of emotions of truth. Secondly, there is a need to experiment as to whether you're soulmates or not. Is there not? You're in a relationship already, and before you leave this relationship, you need to experiment first, rather than just thinking that he's not and stating that. You need to first experiment. Secondly, you've said that you're angry with men and that you're fearful of men. Well, obviously that's going to be a major thing playing out in your relationship.
Yeah.
Right? So this is another part of the information that needs to be confronted. So it would be better, wouldn't it, to say something like, I would like to experiment with whether we're soulmates or not.
Well, that's basically the discussion we're having, but I'm wondering, like, if I'm...
When you say this to a person, you sound like you've already made a choice, you've already made a decision, and the decision is not based on any factual or logical evidence. It's only based on a thought. And so therefore, like presenting just thoughts like that is, like, of course, going to have its own results. particularly when you know that you're blocked to men and have been blocked to men for such a long time, and you feel in anger with men and you feel in a rage with men.
I was worried I was being unethical still being with him.
Well, I agree, but you've been unethical for 26 years being with him.
Yeah.
And now's not the time to start getting all of a sudden all high and mighty about it, but understanding, firstly, let's go back to what I would do in the situation. I'd go, okay, how do I feel about men generally? My feelings about men are, you can list some for me, Vera. Just be honest about how you feel.
They're controlling.
They're controlling, okay. And you're not controlling, are you?
Oh, I'm controlling.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, I think they scare me.
So you're afraid of, do you know why you're afraid? So let's just say, they scare me, but so there's fear, but the question has to be asked, why? Why do they frighten you so much?
I'm not sure at this moment.
You told me the reason yesterday.
When do you mean?
What happened when you were little?
You said I needed to experiment if whether that was true or not. I haven't done that yet.
No, but you feel that it possibly is.
Yeah.
So you feel there's been some form of abuse from a male towards yourself, yes? So of course you're going to fear a group of people who perpetrated abuse towards you. Can you see that? So that's a primary reason for your fear. It's interesting when I ask you, why are you afraid? You go, I don't really know. And yet you've actually already stated the primary reason why you're afraid, right? What other reasons are you afraid? So you're afraid of men because they can potentially abuse you. Yeah? So let's write that down. They're stronger than you and therefore can overpower you and hurt you. Isn't that a primary reason? What's any other reasons?
Yeah, the main ones. I generally like men beyond those things.
Why do you like men? Tell me why you like men. So you had a love-hate relationship with them?
Yeah.
Let's look at why you like men.
They're more direct than women.
So you like their honesty and directness, right?
They tend to be interested in more things that I'm interested in than most women.
Okay, so they have a wider scope of interest that matches yours.
Yeah.
These are, of course, not my opinions. They're yours that I'm writing down because I don't agree with all of them, but I'm happy to write them down because they're yours.
Well, the ones I've come across anyway.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Because are going to be the ones you attract, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do you feel about them? Now, can I just show you that if these were the only emotions you had towards men, you would never be angry with them, would you? So these emotions are not creating your anger, are they? Can you see that? These emotions are like, I think they're honest and direct, that's really good. I like their scope of interest, it's really good. These are things I like about these fellows, you know, like so they're nice to me. Like, and you'd never be upset and angry and worried about what you like. The only areas that are going to cause you to get angry and fear-based are the fear-based areas, aren't they? Can you see that? So can you see if I, in your situation, I'd be primarily looking at this particular emotion. That'd be my highest priority if I'm focusing on sorting out my relationship.
Well,
Aquí, para la transcripción, lo que hacen es, en vez de decir, fijarse en la emoción, porque es lo que dice Miller, dice, me fijaría en esta emoción mientras él encuadra el nombre de abuso posible, potencial abuso que me ha pasado. Entonces dice emoción, yo me fijaría sobre todo en esa emoción, la relativa a lo que encuadra ahí.
I've experimented with that one a lot, and
Well, I don't know if I could agree with you there, Vera.
oh God, it feels like
You have not felt the emotions associated with it. You have intellectually come across these things in the past, but you've not yet fully felt the emotions. Because if you fully feel the emotion, the fear would disappear, and therefore the anger with men would disappear. You understand? So you are afraid of this still, which tells me that the emotions are not addressed. So while you may have, what I find happens with a lot of the issues with regard to any form of use, whether it's physical, emotional, or sexual in nature, any form of use has this general response. Here's the situation of the abuse and what it's caused. Let's call that the wall. Here's the person who has been abused. Often it's a woman. She intellectually makes steps and emotionally makes some steps till she gets to the wall. You know? Then once you hit the wall, as the saying goes, everything hits the fan, right? That's when the real emotions start being triggered. The emotions about sex and love and open heart. And it's really, in the end, this wall is what creates the lack of open heart. You're going to have to open your heart to get through this wall. And that's what you're absolutely terrified of doing. Yes? So this is the issue that we face, right?
I don't even know what that means. What?
I know, but you've got to be careful here that you don't, because you're so afraid, that you don't say, I don't even know what that means, so I'm going to give up before I begin. You can discover what that means through a process, but you need to engage the process. You've got to be careful that we do not use as an excuse our fear. You see, this wall is a wall of fear, yeah? It's a wall of fear that every time in the past we come up to, we bounce off of, right? And I've seen this happen over and over and over and over again. You imagine in 2,000 years of life helping people to confront their fears, you're going to see this happen very, very frequently, right?
I've gone into this so many times. What am I missing? Like, I've been shaking and feeling shame, and what am I not doing? I'm obviously not doing something.
You don't want to open your heart.
To men.
Yeah. You don't
because
want to open
I'm
your
afraid of them.
Well, you don't want to open your heart. You don't want to trust one of them. Right?
Because I think I did trust this man.
Exactly. That's the reason why. That's what you have to go through, the feeling of all this. Like, once you release the feeling that you trusted somebody and they hurt you, doesn't matter whether it's physically, emotionally, or sexually, or any other way, that you trusted them and they hurt you, right? Once you go through that emotionally, you'll actually release that from you, and now you'll be able to go, oh yeah, I can't trust that man, but I can trust that man. You'll be able to feel that you can, and you will. Right? You feel the man you can't trust because you can feel in him the emotions that this other man had in your life, and so you won't be able to. You will get it. No, like, I can trust my own assessment of this situation at the moment. You can't trust your assessment in situation of any man, because at the moment this underlying emotion guides all of your interactions with every man, including, of course, whoever is your partner. So fear is stopping you from opening your heart. Now, on the other hand, you want your man to open his heart to you, don't you?
Well, he's in the same position as me, yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't trust women either.
Of course, of course. That's the kind of man that we want. So that way we're both happy of living a life where basically we're happy living this life. There's you, there's him, here's the wall, and that's our relationship. We get some of our addictions met through this wall, but none of us have to open our heart. None of us have to actually confront any major issues. None of us have to be emotionally expressive, and none of us have to love with all of our being.
I mean, I've been happy with it the way it is there, where he's not opening up and I'm not opening up and we're pretending to have a marriage. But now I don't want that anymore.
Of course. So you can't then go, I'm leaving you because you don't want what I want, when you wanted him like that before, and he's now got to also go through this process of getting used to the fact that you want something different.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because you're saying you want that wall down, but to get that wall down, this wall, which is only inside of you, has to come down. Do you understand? Now, if you had released this wall and then said to him, I don't know if we can stay in a relationship, I would understand more. But if you have not released this wall and you say to him, I don't want to stay in a relationship with you, I'd have to question what your motivation is, because you're still not releasing the thing that causes the blockage on your side. You understand? Now, I understand that he has the same wall. I understand that he might have a wall. I don't know if it's as large as yours, so I'll draw it a bit smaller. So I feel it's not as large as yours. There's the wall. There's his wall. No, there's him. But he has got some other walls, not just a relationship. He's got some other walls to emotion. Yes.
Yes.
So here's another wall there. This wall is the relationship wall. That's yours, right? The opening your heart wall. But then to open his heart, he's going to have to be able to feel some grief. You're able to feel some grief, right? At the moment, you're feeling something, right? So you're able to feel something. So you don't have that additional wall to work your way through. He does. Right? So would it be right for me then to go, I come up to the wall and I bounce off of it? Would it be right for me, ethically right for me, to then expect him to come up to his walls and go through them? When I go up to my wall and I bounce off it, can you see? It would not be ethically right, would it, for me to expect that I can go up to my wall and bounce off at any time I want, but he has to go up to his walls and work through them. Right? What would be more ethical, first for a start for me, would be for me to go up to my wall and actually deconstruct it, brick by brick if I need to, right? And then once I've deconstructed it, I now can say to him, I've been willing to give you my heart now, but this is the wall you've got. Now I can actually have some ethical desire for him to do the same. Does that make sense?
So the way I face my fear is by opening my heart.
Yes, yes. You're afraid of going into a relationship. The way you address the fear is by opening your heart. Yes, you're going to need to open your heart through a process. It's not going to be something you're going to be able to do overnight. It's like, Vera, open your heart. Like, it's not going to be open sesame, and it happens like that. It's going to be a process that you're going to need to engage. And it's going to be confronting because it's been there for a long time.
Well, the way I've been doing it is just by becoming more honest about how I feel.
Yeah,
is that enough?
No, it's not enough. There's got to be a willingness to feel your terror, which is what I discussed with you yesterday. Because the wall is a wall of terror. Right? So we can be honest. Honesty is essential because honesty says this wall exists. That's honesty. So honesty is saying yes, I have this wall. That's a very good step, because without being honest, you're never going to even do anything about the wall. But the next step is to destroy the wall. And to destroy the wall is a wall of fear. To destroy anything emotionally, we need to feel it, to release it. We're going to need to feel the terror.
Have I done pieces of it?
Of course you've done pieces of it. You know
So
you
I
have.
just need to
You would not have even been able to get into grief when I was just talking to you just earlier about the subject. Instead, you would have got into rage, which, remember, in previous discussions you have gotten into. So the fact is, now I can speak with you about a subject that before caused rage, and now it doesn't cause rage, is an indication you have dealt with some things about the wall. So this is very good. That's progress, isn't it? That's forward progress. Yes. However, what you really want in your life is for the wall to be gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
That would be beautiful, wouldn't it? To imagine living a life without any fear of relationship, without any fear of your heart being hurt. You know, this would be fantastic. It'd be a beautiful thing to experience. So then the wall doesn't exist. I don't have to feel it anymore because it's not there anymore. Now I've opened my heart, and now this other person, who may or may not be my soulmate, is faced with some decisions ethically inside of themselves. And we can point that out to them. Right? So that's what I've had to do, and Mary is going through this, exactly this. So Mary's heart's still blocked towards me. Mary's heart still, she's got grief to feel that she hasn't felt yet. She's got the wall of fear that she's got about relationship, which she's going through. That's why she's walked in and out of our discussion today, because she can feel those feelings in her, and she's gone away to feel them. Does that make sense? And I've opened my heart, and she knows I have. And that becomes more attractive, doesn't it, to somebody when you do that? Now, I'm not going to say to Mary, I've opened my heart, now you have to open yours. But I can say to Mary, I've opened my heart, if you don't open yours, then we still don't have a relationship. Right? I can say that, because we don't. We don't until both of us have an open heart.
Thank you.
So that's what I would advise. Well, it's time to
Bueno, pues así termina.
have a break, eh? Shall we do that? If we come back at 1.
Hacen un corte y en la siguiente parte, pues ya hemos visto, era el tema de restringir a los niños, pero nos queda una parte muy interesante donde van a hablar de la moral en contraste con la ética, es decir, cómo Dios ve las cosas, ¿no? Que es sintonizarse con Dios en ese sentido de armonizarse a nivel más profundo, ¿no? Del alma y todo eso. Pues nos queda una parte muy interesante, pero esta tenía muchísimas cosas.
Sí, sí, en un momento sentí que tenía respuestas a muchas cuestiones. El video que no subí todavía, que no subí a mi canal, habla de la ira. Sí, la ira con los hombres, y si bien, como dice él, al principio ni siquiera se trata de tener una relación con Dios. Cuando habla en la balanza, simplemente es muy desamoroso en sí mismo, y es muy triste, sobre todo eso siento. Es muy triste en sí mismo, digamos. Después sí, por supuesto que si uno lo pone como camino para una relación con Dios, tiene otro propósito, pero en sí mismo volverse más amoroso y asumir verdaderamente la responsabilidad lo que implica. Me sentí muy identificada con Elvira en
Sí,
su intelectualidad, ¿no? Eh, ya hice esto, ya lloré, ya sentí vergüenza. Sí,
sí,
eh, eh,
viendo con
esa,
muchos ejemplos muy buenos. No sé si quieres que
ajá.
paremos y seguimos viendo luego, y si quieres seguir, parar para quedarte solo sintiendo.
En realidad me gustaría terminarlo nomás. Ahora que te hablé empecé a llorar, sí. No estaba llorando.
No, pues lo terminaríamos en un segundo
Sí,
para cortarlo. Ahora comentemos lo que queramos un poquillo, pero la parte que nos queda, que no es toda la segunda parte, porque ya hemos hecho la de restringir a los
ya,
niños, pues súper buena también, pero la haríamos en otro.
sí, sí, es eso en realidad, porque justo fue lo que yo abrí. Por eso digo, desde que hace un tiempo algunas cosas en las que me he comprometido un poco y he comprendido la ley de la atracción, cada vez que hablamos algo siento que llega una respuesta que siempre es así en realidad, es que uno está abierto a verla nada más, ¿no? Siempre, todo el tiempo Dios nos habla 24/7 y bueno, así llegan y llegan las verdades. Bueno, gracias, Iván.
Y es increíble cómo todo el aspecto que lo ha vuelto a dejar claro aquí,
Sí,
cómo honramos el miedo, y ahora mismo ya es exagerado y vemos que es cíclico, o sea, porque siempre ha habido supuestas pandemias que han sido usadas por entrar un poco también en el aspecto que es menos importante, porque tenemos que cambiar individualmente, no tenemos que demoler nuestros muros, pero todos esos muros crean, por ley de la atracción, como no están demolidos, crean todavía más factores para que tengamos miedo y protejamos los miedos de los demás. O sea, estamos todo el rato, ahora mismo con la pandemia, lo ha hecho muy gráfico aquí Miller, expresando justo lo que está pasando. Yo me protejo o sea, voy a hacer mi vida para que haya la cantidad menos de miedo posible, o sea, que no tenga que afrontar, eso es muy tergiversado, porque es que no tenga que afrontar el miedo que tengo a que la otra persona me contagie o lo que sea. Entonces la gente va separándose. Es que vivimos ahora mismo como que vivimos en donde lo vivimos más, eso que a lo mejor allí en tu ciudad no, es como una condición infernal. Es la realidad de la condición del alma, ¿no? Con esos muros.
claro,
Y ahora los
sí.
muros están representándose con las mascarillas, con la separación. Es absolutamente increíble.
¿Y cómo podemos convivir, por ejemplo, en una relación de pareja, Iván? Que es un poco lo que conté yo ahora en ese video que grababa, que no, hasta, o sea, que no hay honestidad, todo lo que Elvira, un poco que el camino que recorrió a Jota, que incluso hasta qué punto la verdad amenaza la relación, esto de cuidar, ¿no? De cuidar los miedos. Yo que construí una red para cuidar mis heridas, las adicciones, entonces todos satisfacían mis adicciones, yo no las sentía y así fue la lógica que hay debajo de mis relaciones. Ahora que puedo ver, incluso con los hijos varones, de alguna manera los ataqué también a ambos. Y como, claro, veía yo que la verdad, entre comillas, tenemos miedo a la verdad porque, claro, taclea así de abajo, derrumba ese muro que me llevó a construir y da miedo. La verdad es muy contradictorio, pero es así. Nos esforzamos por sostener el muro, ¿no? Por seguir poniendo cualquier cosa que lo haga temblar, para nosotros no.
Claro, fíjate, lo que estamos haciendo es que al proteger los miedos, lo que estamos es teniendo miedo de lo grande que es el alma en el fondo, porque ella es la que ella es la que ha absorbido los miedos que son de fabricación completamente humana. Y claro, si son tan poderosos como para hacer esto a nivel mundial, para crear todo este mundo de trueque, de dinero y de emociones, es tan poderoso el sistema del miedo y del trueque. Entonces, claro, eso es como un signo indirecto del poder del alma, ¿no? En el sentido del amor, en el sentido de Dios, ¿no? Y por eso...
De cómo funcionan las leyes, sí.
Claro, está todo al revés, ¿no? O sea, claro, por eso es tan increíble la visión de la verdad divina. O sea, con lo de las leyes, tan simple, tan serio a la vez y tan liberador, ¿no? La verdad con el amor y punto.
Sí, maravilloso. Sí, sigue, que también lo dije en el vivo, es un descubrimiento tras descubrimiento. Y eso que sé que es digamos, mi progresión, porque identifico los miedos, identifico que no me atrevo a la verdad. Lo reconozco, pero sé que, entre comillas, todavía no me atrevo, pero digamos, es mi punto de partida, la aceptación y de ese aspecto, pero sigue siendo revolucionario en cuanto a eso, a lo que descubro. Y lo de la herida fue a partir de esta secuencia que vinimos haciendo de comunicarse con Dios, de las heridas con Dios, de la rebelión, y así fue entrando, digamos. Siempre se va a tratar, como dijiste recién, de uno mismo, porque es en el fondo una tarea individual, ¿no? Es la autorresponsabilidad que es el propósito de nuestra experiencia aquí en la Tierra. Ujú. Desarrollarlo.
Pues bueno, pues ahí en el PDF que enlazo ahí en los vídeos, pues no suelo poner estos dibujitos, ¿verdad? En lo que es los textos. Que bueno, luego tú sí que pones muchos dibujos en los vídeos que haces de tu canal muchas veces para parecido
Claro, pues no
a lo
tengo
que
la
es.
pizarra, sí.
Sí, y bueno, eso que en español pues no pongo, pero fijaros cómo se puede consultar las transcripciones de muchos de los talleres y están estos dibujos que ha sido tan básico pero tan ilustrativo, ¿no? Sobre todo cuando ya empieza a dibujar, pues eso, que una cosa es el muro de la relación y otra el muro de cada cual, que es como termina aquí. Bueno, pues lo dejamos y vamos qué tal estamos para seguir con otro que ya publicaré. Pues nada,
Bueno,
siempre cuando haga el índice y esto de este, pues ya lo subo. Pues gracias y hasta próximamente. Despídete de la mano.
muchas gracias. Muchísimas gracias. La verdad es que es súper movilizante y
Sí,
significativo. Gracias.
está muy bonito este taller. Vamos a ver.